Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are so very glad to have you here at the Devon Energy Center for the first ever Energy 4.0 Forum and Awards. We've recruited an outstanding lineup of keynote speakers and panelists for today's discussions. I want to thank all of our speakers, our panelists, and our sponsors who are making this event possible today. Our sponsors are Baker Hughes, Devon Energy, OG&E Energy, OU's Newborn College of Earth and Energy, the Rudnicki Law Firm, Crow & Dunlevy, and the State Chamber of Oklahoma. Let's give a big hand to our sponsors. I especially want to thank Sean Trauschke, Dave Hager, and Mike Mean for volunteering their time and giving us their high-level perspectives on the benefits and outcomes of digital innovation in the energy industry. This event was really born out of the experience I had in a previous life as editor-in-chief of Power Engineering Magazine and chairman of PowerGen International. Did that for about 9 years and had access to some of the best and some of the brightest in the power sector. I remember talking to some engineers at Rockwell Automation, and this was a couple of years ago, and we're at a point now where we can build a combined cycle gas plant in Oklahoma or overseas and fire that plant up and have it at full speed in just a few minutes from a remote office in New York City. That's how far we've come. We've come a long ways in the last 20 years, and it's going to be very interesting to see where we go in the next 20 years. The Journal Record covers a lot of big business stories and business trends, but the growth and application of digital technologies in power plants, in oil and gas production, in transmission and distribution is one of the most exciting trends in business today. The use of more sensors, better controls, better data management software has led to tremendous savings and efficiencies. We're burning much less fuel, we're lowering emissions, and the industry is making much better use of its time in managing energy assets in this age of big data. But there are challenges. Making sense of all this data is a challenge. There are regulatory challenges in applying these solutions and then recovering the cost. There are liability issues you have to consider. That's going to be a big topic for our oil and gas panel that we'll have later this morning. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground today. We've come a long way, as I said, in the last 20 years, and our speakers today will attempt to tell us what the next 20 years might bring to this great industry. But before we get started, I'd like to thank the staff of the Journal Record for putting all of this together. At this time, I'd like to recognize Vicki, Laura, Shelley, Sarah, Wendy, and Jessica Burleson. If you could stand up for just a moment so we could recognize you for all your hard work. There she is. They do a great job of taking care of me, and I need all the help I can get. Well, let's go ahead and meet our first keynote speaker. Sean Trauschke is the chairman, president, and CEO of OG&E Energy. In addition to leading one of the most innovative electric utilities in the world, Sean is deeply committed to economic development in this city and the entire state. He and the company he leads are just as committed to supporting this state's nonprofit groups and giving back to the communities they serve. Sean earned his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of North Carolina, his MBA from the University of South Carolina, and completed the advanced management program at Harvard Business School. He serves on several boards, including the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, United Way of Central Oklahoma, the Children's Hospital Foundation, and the list goes on and on. He is a man of great experience and knowledge. Please put your hands together for Sean Trauschke.
Well, thank you, Russell, for that embarrassing introduction. At any rate, listen, I think first things first, we ought to really acknowledge what Russell and his team at the Journal Record are doing, what they're doing for our community, really trying to tell the story of what's going on in energy in Oklahoma City, or in Oklahoma. I shouldn't say Oklahoma City. So, Russell, appreciate all of your great work that you're doing. Thank you for having me today. As I look around the room, a lot of different businesses around. We'll talk a little bit about electricity and kind of how things have evolved in innovation. But when I think about innovation is comes from people. It doesn't come from technology. Technology is just a means to achieve it. And beneath innovation is really what I like to think of in terms of learning. And I think learning is a lifelong endeavor. It never stops. It doesn't stop with a college degree. It doesn't stop with your first job, your first promotion. It continues. And we learn from each other. And so forums like this are invaluable to kind of pick up something new and to build upon. So as I think about our company, we've been around 117 years. There's a lot we've learned over that 117 years. There's been great innovations, and I could spend hours talking about Russell, the very first combined cycle plant that was built in Oklahoma. We built it. First wind farm, first solar farm. We first program in the country that actually produced a comprehensive demand response program where customers could kind of manage their usage. We could go on and on, but I'm not sure that's really what's important. I was trying to figure out what's a good illustration or example of how technology and how innovation has really changed, because over 117 years a lot has changed. But I think the really difference that we've seen here recently is the period of time we're in now is just the inflection point we have. The rate of change has just gone asymptotic. And I'll give you an example. So back in the old days, we live in a state that has sometimes some wild and unpredictable weather patterns. And so back in the old days when a storm would come through, Russell would call our office and say, hey, my service is out at my house. My name's Russell Ray, 1425 South Church Street, da-da-da-da-da. Russell's neighbor would call us too. And then their neighbor would call, their neighbor would call. And our engineers would get the circuit maps out, lay them out on the table, and start pinpointing where these outages were. You can visualize that exercise. They would then dispatch one of our troubleshooters to go assess that line, go around and find out what happened. They would call back and say, hey, a car hit this pole, lightning struck this transformer, send 2 transformers, 2 poles. We would dispatch a line crew. They would go out, replace all that service, fix that, restore the service. That would take hours. Today, we know when Russell is out. We know that neighbors are out. In some cases, we know exactly where the fault occurred. In some cases, we actually have equipment out there that has an algorithm that will self-heal that system. It'll isolate the outage at Russell's house, but restore the service remotely without sending a crew. So when I say back in the old days, that was just 6 or 7 years ago. It is phenomenal what we do today versus what has changed over the years. Now, what's also happened is expectations have changed. So you remember back in the old days, me included, when I came into my house or came into our business, the expectation was simply flip the light switch on, the lights come on, the air condition works in August, whatever business or process and equipment we had, it functioned properly, right? Today, we have a whole new set of expectations. We have a handful of customers that say, you know what, I don't care what you do, I just want the absolute lowest bill possible. Well, the fact is, if they're served by us, they absolutely do, because we have the lowest rates in the country today. We have some customers that say, look, I want all of my resources coming from, or all of my energy coming from renewable resources. We have renewable resources and we have a program they can buy that. Now, most of you in here are technical people. We are not tracking electrons from a wind farm or solar farm to a home or business. But nevertheless, they have the opportunity to secure those resources. We have other customers that are keenly focused on the resiliency of their service. Case in point is Tinker Air Force Base. They're not only focused on what's inside their perimeter, but what's what's outside the perimeter and how we interface with that system. We have other customers that are focused on what we think of in terms of power quality, just really tight voltages. And so as we think about technology, downstream, technology is really, and our service is really a downstream enabler for future technology. So there's a lot of processing equipment out there in industry that requires a very strong reliability, resiliency, no interruptions, but also a tight power quality. You know, you think about it, you know, just think about an engine just cold, you know, shutting down, you know, losing power. That's not good long term for any injury, any mechanical piece of equipment. My point on all that is we have a higher level of expectations. I think that's great. I think it fuels us to get better every day. But I'd like you to just think a minute and pause a minute. Just think if you didn't have electricity. You know, what that would do for national defense at Tinker. What that would do for your business, medical, hospitals, your own home in August when it's really hot. So the idea that, you know, when we talk a lot about that, you know, it's really life-altering, life-enhancing, it really is. And so as we think about, you know, going back to the old days, how this has really evolved, how our business and, you know, how we deliver electricity is really involved, it really has. And it extends further to how we operate our plants. So nowadays, we've got to make sure that we can respond to any kind of changes in voltage on our system within a 2 to 4 second range. So we've got to be able to increase megawatts, decrease megawatts to serve those customers. So to the extent that there's a drilling operation that shuts down unexpectedly that we did not prepare for, we need to manage that voltage. To the extent that we start up a compression system that we weren't prepared for, we've got to manage that voltage. So the idea of technology being able to manage that doesn't just extend to the end user. We've got to be a partner in promoting that going forward. So we think a lot about technology and innovation in our company, and you know, but I always tell people, you know, there are no eureka moments, there are no quick fixes, there are no silver bullets, you know, and I want people to always think about what's the second and third bounce of that ball. And back in the old days, nobody in this room was talking about cyber threats or cybersecurity. That was not a topic of discussion any of us were really contemplating. So at our company, we get pinged over 150,000 times a month. People, countries, trying to. So our responsibility is as we create new products, as we create new ways of doing business, if we add technology to our system, we've got to make sure that we maintain the security, the resiliency, and the reliability of that system. So, and that does those pings we're getting on our system, that doesn't even include what each one of us get at home when we get those emails, somebody trying to steal our identity or something like that. But that's a responsibility because we cannot lose control of this system, and because that impacts your business. I gave you an example. Imagine if you didn't have electricity, what impact that would have on your business. So today, the average bill in Oklahoma, residential monthly bill in Oklahoma is $104. That's, if any of you have teenage children, that's less than the cell phone, right? But you recognize we, maybe not them, but we value electricity more than cell phone at any rate. So where are we going today? So we hire more and more data scientists looking at business intelligence operations. How do we gain insights out of our business? How do we move our business forward? Because in my view, our company's only as successful, only as strong as the communities we serve. We serve 276 of them, and so if they're growing, we're growing. So our goal is to make sure those businesses and communities, they prosper, they do better. And so how do we make their business, their communities grow? And so we've we hire more and more data scientists looking at insights, how we can deliver our service more efficiently. Russell alluded to how we've changed our fuel mix, how we run and operate our plants today. Our emissions are industry leading across the country. If I look at our expenses, our operation and maintenance expenses today are on a customer basis are less today than they were 2011. So driving those efficiencies out of the business. But at the same time, you've got to protect the business from a cyber standpoint. So today what we've been working on is we have a neat little project in Arkansas where we measure the average duration of outages, right? Just how long an outage has been going. So we worked on a project this past year in Arkansas that we covered a third of the circuits. And so we've reduced the duration of those outages on those circuits by 69%. And so you say, what does that mean? Well, we compare that to the 3-year average of what we've done historically. And you say, well, what happened to the circuits you didn't work on? Well, they got worse by 7%. And so, the idea of deploying this technology where we're able to self-heal circuits, avoid sending crews out to restore that service, avoid the interruptions to those businesses. Every interruption to a business, whether it was because of a squirrel, lightning strike, whatever, is an impact to that economy. And so the idea that we can eliminate that and continue to grow that economy is invaluable. The other thing that may not sound as innovative and as exciting as you may think, but we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 streetlights. Not all the streetlights in Oklahoma City we own, but a lot of them we do around the state. And so, as you know, the CFL bulb is non-existent. And so we're converting all those to LED as those expire. But changing a light bulb, that's not innovative. That doesn't do anything, right? I can even do that at home. But what we've done as we change these out over the next handful of years is we're integrating that with the rest of our system. So now that is just increasing the patchwork, the framework that we have across our system. So now we have communication equipment on all those lights. We know when they're out. In some cases, we know the cause of that outage. In some cases, we can correct it remotely. But more importantly, we've enhanced the communication capabilities all across our system for those lights. And that's really important to me that every day we have an opportunity to make a difference in our own businesses. And the idea that you lift your head up and you don't just do the task, changing the light bulb, but you look at it in terms of how do you make it better? How do we improve upon this? And it kind of goes back to what I began with around innovation. It comes from all of us. Technology is just a mechanism, a means to achieve it. But that intellectual curiosity that you have in your businesses where someone's looking at an opportunity and saying, how could I make this better? That's what builds companies. That's what builds communities. The idea that we've all collectively had the success we've had is great. But we don't have the right to just rest on those laurels. We have the responsibility to add to it and build to it. And things like this is how you learn. So you may ask, so what are y'all doing? How do you get these ideas? What are you doing in the future? We are contributors. We are engaged in a number of funds, infrastructure funds that invest in startup businesses, startup companies, not just in Oklahoma, but around the world. And the idea there is how could we make those investments and better our business? Well, that's the first point. Second point is it's learning, right? You're interacting with new businesses, new environments, new technologies, and there's some learning that comes out of that. And that learning is brought back to our company, and we begin to think and deploy that technology in a way that we hadn't used before. And so some of these technologies aren't long-lived. Some are just at their infancy, but nevertheless, we're learning through that. And so one piece of technology that I think we've talked a lot, and you'll probably talk a lot today, is really around storage. I think that's clearly the game changer for a lot of our businesses going forward. We looked and considered investing and buying a battery company. If you think back, maybe not in the old days, but just a couple years ago, there were a lot of startup battery manufacturers. Remember? I mean, there were a lot of startup companies. And what's happened to them? They're all gone. The same dynamic is occurring in the storage field as occurred in your cell phone. You look at your cell phone today, it's lighter, it's got a longer life to it, the density's changed, and it's a much better battery than it was 3 or 4 years ago. Well, those same people that invested in the cell battery are investing in storage batteries. So that industry's contracting. But I said I think that's a game changer, and I think the leading indicator is really the electric vehicle. Regardless of your view of electric vehicles, you look at the battery technology in an electric vehicle. Besides the price, the biggest headwind to an electric vehicle years ago was the range anxiety. They would last 40 miles, 50 miles, something like that. Now they're talking in the hundreds of miles. So we made a decision. Some cities reacted to that, and companies, ringed their communities with a bunch of charging stations, to combat the range anxiety people may have. We put some charging stations out, but we recognize that we need to enable future technology, i.e. the battery, to get bigger and to get better. And then you're not going to need 3 or 4 charging stations on every street corner. And I think that was a good investment, or a good decision not to make that investment. I only bring that up because the idea of storage is, I think, the real game changer in our business. It changes how we use electricity. It changes how we generate electricity. And obviously, it produces the capability of storing electricity. So when I look back, I mentioned before, our business is really focused on, how do we make those businesses and companies we serve successful? And the quality of the product we deliver, how do we enhance that each day? We do measure ourselves on affordability, and we're really proud of the fact that our customers enjoy the lowest rates in the country. Russell talked about how we're operating our fleet today. Emissions reductions are an important component of that, and we've significantly reduced those to an industry-leading position. I've talked about the idea that have we been able to increase the value or enhance the value of the product we deliver to those customers. And I think about what Tinker is doing today versus what they were able to produce and maintain back in the old days, 3 or 4 years ago. And they're growing. The reason they're able to grow is they're able to do more, right? And so I would just leave you with, I would encourage you, don't stop learning. Take it back. Hopefully you get something out of this today. I do firmly believe it's a lifelong endeavor. It doesn't stop. And, the more people we have thinking about how we can build upon what people in front of us have done, the better. So look, thank you for your time today, and have a great day. Thank you. Russell.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. That was outstanding. Thank you, Sean. Sean did an excellent job of setting the stage for our discussion today and brought up many points, cybersecurity issues, the proliferation of energy storage. It is a game changer, and the technology has come to a point where it is commercially viable. And in a state with so much wind power capacity, that is certainly something we will probably see more of. We heard of an announcement to build a major battery storage project in Oklahoma already, and I think more projects will follow suit. At this time, I'd like to invite our power generation panel to the stage. Cody Graves, Steve Baker, Donnie Jones, and Don Shandy. Big round of applause for our power generation panel.